It started with a couch. Not mine, not even really mine for the weekend. It belonged to my friend Devin's older brother, Marc, who had a 2-bedroom apartment downtown and a habit of collecting both modern furniture and people who needed a place to crash. That weekend, it was me. My roommate had family in town, and I didn't feel like playing third wheel for 3 straight days, so when Devin offered to ask Marc if I could crash on his couch, I said yes before he even finished the sentence. Marc said it was fine. He always did. Marc was the kind of guy who said, "Yeah, man, whatever you need," and actually meant it. Quiet, a little sarcastic, and effortlessly hot in that way. Guys who don't try somehow are. He was 5 years older than us, worked in architecture, had thick glasses he only wore at night, and never seemed bothered by anything. When I got there, he opened the door barefoot, in joggers and a black t-shirt that clung a little too well to his chest. His hair was damp like he'd just showered, and he held a mug of something that smelled vaguely like cinnamon. "Hey," he said, stepping aside so I could come in. "You eat yet?" I blinked. No. "There's chili on the stove," he said, already walking back toward the kitchen. "Made too much. You want a beer?" I nodded, dropping my duffel by the arm of the couch. The apartment was warm, the kind of cozy that didn't feel performative. No scented candles, just clean wood floors, soft lighting, and a playlist that sounded like lo-fi jazz. I was already more comfortable than I should have been. We sat on the couch, his couch, eating chili out of mismatched bowls and drinking Modelo from the bottle. At one point, he asked about my work. I told him I'd just started freelancing full-time in UI/UX, and instead of nodding vaguely like most people do, he asked, "You do mobile or web?" That was the first time I felt it, that tiny click of connection, like he wasn't just listening. He got it. I didn't expect to stay up past midnight. Or for him to pull out a bottle of bourbon after we finished the beers. Or for us to start talking about things that didn't come up often. Exes, anxiety, the weird quiet after your 20s start winding down and you realize you still don't feel like an adult. By 2 a.m., I was a little buzzed, curled up under a blanket, and Marc was next to me, barefoot, hoodie on, legs stretched out in front of him like this was any other night. "You good?" he asked as I adjusted the pillow behind me. "Yeah," I said. "This couch is better than my bed." He smirked. "That's 'cause you've never actually laid on my bed." There was a beat. Then he raised an eyebrow. "Too far?" I laughed. "A little." "Sorry," he said. But he didn't look sorry. More amused. Curious. I didn't say anything. Just sipped the rest of my drink and turned toward the TV. Some old movie was playing, muted, with subtitles. We didn't talk much after that. At some point he stood up, stretched, and said, "Night, man." But before he walked off, he looked down at me for just a second too long, like he wanted to say something. Then he didn't. The next morning, he made coffee, and he didn't mention the joke, or the look, or how I caught myself thinking about it while brushing my teeth in his guest bathroom. But something had changed, or maybe something had started. I didn't leave after the weekend. Not on purpose. Marc didn't kick me out, and I didn't push it. Monday came, and I said something casual like, "Hey, if you don't mind me hanging around one more night, I'll head out tomorrow." And he just shrugged and said, "You know where the coffee is." Tuesday turned into Wednesday. By Thursday, he'd given me my own coffee mug, black ceramic, matte finish. It said, "Probably gay," in tiny white font at the bottom. I'm still not sure if it was a joke or a subtle test, but I laughed when I saw it, and he didn't explain. We didn't talk about it. Not the mug. Not the look. Not anything, really. But we were talking. Constantly. Over coffee. Over dinner. While one of us pretended to work on our laptops in the living room. It wasn't flirty, exactly. But it wasn't just friendly, either. It was like we'd both found this soft rhythm, and neither of us wanted to name it yet. That Thursday night, we were sitting side by side on the couch again, legs almost touching, watching a documentary about volcanoes of all things. Mark was half under a blanket, hoodie zipped up to his chin, and I was hugging a throw pillow to my chest like it was armor. He nudged me once with his elbow when a scene showed lava oozing through a town. You ever think about what you'd grab if you had to evacuate? I looked at him. Like, for real? He nodded. My hard drive, my passport, and probably the dog. You don't have a dog. I'd grab yours, he smirked. I don't have a dog either. Then I guess we're both screwed. That made him laugh, a soft, low sound that made my stomach twist a little in a way I didn't fully understand. He looked at me after that, a little longer than necessary, then said, "You ever think about moving out of your place?" I shrugged. "Sometimes. You could crash here longer. If you wanted." I blinked. "You serious?" "Yeah," he said. "I mean, you basically live here already, and I don't mind the company." There it was again. That subtle shift, like he was saying more than the words on the surface. I nodded slowly. "I'll think about it." Later that night, we were brushing our teeth at the same time. He handed me a new toothbrush from under the sink without me asking. It was still in the package. Navy blue. "You bought me a toothbrush?" I asked, trying to play it cool. Mark shrugged. "You keep using the one I give to guests. Thought you deserved an upgrade." I couldn't tell if I was blushing, but I felt warm in that way. That's not about temperature. "Thanks," I said. He met my eyes in the mirror. "You're welcome." That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay there on the couch, eyes open, watching the shadows move across the ceiling. My heart was racing for no reason. Except maybe there was a reason. It was after midnight when I heard his bedroom door open. Soft footsteps. He walked into the kitchen, opened the fridge, closed it again. I thought maybe that was it, just a water break or something. But then I heard him pause. "Still awake?" he called softly. I sat up. "Yeah." He walked over. Not close, just near enough to see me in the light from the microwave clock. "You good?" he asked. "I'm fine," I said, just thinking. He stood there for a moment. Then, out of nowhere, he said, "You know I'm not straight, right?" It wasn't a confession, just a fact, dropped into the quiet like it didn't matter. I figured. I said. Mark rubbed the back of his neck. "You're not surprised?" "No." Another pause. He looked at me like he was waiting for something. Then I said, "You know I'm not either, right?" His eyes didn't change. He just nodded, slow and quiet. "Yeah." I figured too. He didn't say anything else. But he didn't go back to his room either. He just sat down at the other end of the couch. Not touching. Not even close. But there. With me. That night didn't end in some big, dramatic kiss. It didn't end in anything at all, actually. He sat on the couch for about 20 minutes, legs stretched out, arms folded over his chest. We didn't talk. We didn't move. We just existed in the same quiet space, barely lit by the microwave clock and the occasional car headlights passing through the blinds. Then, finally, he stood up, stretched, and said, "Good night, man." And I said, "Night." And that was it. Except it wasn't. Because something had opened between us. Like a door neither of us had walked through yet, but we were both standing in the doorway, waiting to see if the other one would take the first step. The next morning, things felt unchanged. And yet not. Mark made coffee like always. I shuffled into the kitchen in his oversized sweatshirt, the one I'd borrowed after forgetting mine, and he didn't say a word about it. Just poured me a mug, handed it over like we'd been doing this forever. "So what's the plan today?" he asked. I shrugged. "Thought I might work from here. Finish that mobile project I told you about. You can use my desk if you want. I've got a site visit mid-morning." "Cool," I said. But the whole time we were talking, I couldn't stop thinking about the fact that we'd both said it. Last night. Out loud, like it was nothing. "You know I'm not straight, right?" "You know I'm not either?" That was new. That was a shift. Around noon, while he was still gone, I sat at his desk pretending to work, but mostly just staring at the same Figma file for 30 straight minutes. I kept thinking about how natural it felt being here, how every piece of his apartment already made space for me. That night, I offered to cook. It wasn't anything fancy, just some pasta and frozen garlic bread, but it felt like something to do with my hands. Something to keep me from overthinking every silence between us. Mark came back just as I was draining the pot. He leaned against the doorway, watching me with that unreadable expression he always had. "You cook now?" "Only when I'm trying to impress someone," I joked. He didn't laugh, just tilted his head slightly. "You trying to impress me?" I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "Is it working?" He smirked, barely. "You didn't burn the bread. That's a good start." We ate on the couch again, plates balanced on our knees, a beer each, something stupid playing in the background that neither of us cared about. At one point he looked over and said, "So, you and anyone right now?" I shook my head. "Nope. You?" "No." And that was it. No follow-up, no explanations, just a statement. We're both single. After dinner, he threw a blanket across both our laps without asking. I didn't move. His leg was warm against mine. We didn't talk for a while, just watched the show. Then, somewhere between episode 2 and 3, he shifted slightly. Not a big move, just enough for his arm to land behind me on the back of the couch. Not touching, but almost. I could feel the heat of it behind my neck, the presence of it. I tried to focus on the screen. I really did. But I could feel him looking at me. Eventually, I turned. He didn't look away. We were close now. Too close to call it casual. I could smell his cologne. Subtle, clean, something earthy. His eyes flicked down to my mouth for a split second, then back up. I didn't breathe, and neither did he. But we didn't kiss. Not then. Instead, he said, quietly, "I don't want to make this weird." "You're not," I said, maybe too quickly. He searched my face for a second longer. Then he leaned back, pulling his arm away like he'd changed his mind. But I was already changed. Because once you notice someone wants to kiss you and you want it too, nothing goes back to how it was. The next day, everything pretended to be normal. We made breakfast together, him scrambling eggs, me burning toast like a pro. We traded headphones at the kitchen island and took turns playing songs we were currently obsessed with. I played something moody and slow. He rolled his eyes but let it play. He played some hyperpop remix that made me laugh out loud. And then, in the middle of it, he looked at me and said, "You have a nice laugh." It wasn't a big moment, but it stayed with me all day. We went our separate ways around noon. He had work stuff. I had freelance edits to knock out, and I thought maybe that weird electricity from the night before had passed. Like it was just a moment, a tension that would fade with enough sunlight and to-do lists. But then evening rolled around again, and suddenly, it was there again. Stronger. I was still on the couch when he got home, laptop open, a glass of red wine I'd swiped from the back of his cabinet next to me. He looked tired but relaxed, hair a little messy, shirt slightly wrinkled. Real life Mark, not the polite host, not the guy who made space for me, but the guy I'd been watching all week without fully letting myself look. "You drink my wine?" he asked, dropping his keys on the counter. "It didn't label it," I said. He raised an eyebrow. "You label your wine?" I shrugged. "No, but maybe I should." He poured himself a glass and joined me on the couch without asking. Like it was routine now. Like the space beside me was reserved. We didn't say much for the next hour. Just scrolled our phones. Played music low in the background. I thought about moving, about grabbing my things and giving him space, because it was getting too easy to stay here, too easy to fall into him. Around 10:30, he set his phone down and said, "You ever wonder what your life would have been like if one thing went differently?" I looked over. Like what? Like if you'd gone to a different school, or kissed someone you wanted to instead of being scared. I paused. "You mean you?" He held my gaze. "I mean anyone," he said. But his eyes didn't move. I swallowed. Yeah, I think about that a lot. He didn't reply right away, just picked at the label on his wine glass. Then, you ever think you missed something because you waited too long? I wasn't sure if he was asking me about me or about us. Maybe, I said, but I think some things show up again, even if you miss them once. His lips parted like he was going to say something else, but then he stopped, and the silence between us thickened. I don't remember moving closer, but I must have, because suddenly our knees were touching. I turned to him, and he didn't move away. He was looking at me again the way he had last night, eyes flicking between mine and my mouth like he was trying to read something he didn't quite understand. And then he leaned in, just slightly, just enough, and then he stopped. Our faces were inches apart. I could feel his breath, warm and slow. My heart was beating so loud I was afraid he could hear it. His voice was barely above a whisper. "Do you want this?" I nodded. That was all he needed. But before he closed the space, before our lips could meet, his phone buzzed. Once. Then again. We both froze. The spell cracked. He leaned back with a sigh, grabbed his phone from the armrest. "Work," he said, glancing at the screen. "It's urgent." I nodded, throat tight. "Yeah, go." He stood up, already dialing as he walked toward the kitchen. I sat there on the couch, still breathing hard, still tasting a kiss that hadn't happened. He didn't come back for a while. By the time he did, I was already in bed. But neither of us slept easy that night. I woke up to the smell of bacon. It took me a second to place it. Marc never cooked breakfast during the week. He usually just chugged protein powder and maybe scarfed down a granola bar on his way out. But that morning, it was different. The apartment smelled warm, comforting, like someone was trying to reset the vibe of the whole place. When I walked out of the guest room, still technically the living room, still technically his couch, Marc was already plating eggs. He was barefoot, in sweatpants and a navy tee, hair sticking up slightly in the back. He looked up and smiled. "Morning." "Hey," I said, voice still groggy. "You cooked?" "Thought it was overdue," he said, sliding a plate across the island. "Peace offering." "For what?" He didn't answer, just sipped his coffee and motioned for me to sit. We ate mostly in silence. Not tense, but not light either. I kept thinking about the almost kiss. How close we'd gotten. How I'd wanted it. How much worse it felt, not because he stopped, but because something important had started and then just hung there, unfinished. Halfway through breakfast, he finally spoke. "About last night." I looked up, suddenly very aware of the fork in my hand. He exhaled, rubbing his jaw. "I didn't plan that. I wasn't trying to." He paused. "I just mean, I don't do that often." I waited. "I don't usually let people stay here," he continued. "Like, really stay. And this week's been, I don't know, different in a good way, but also in a way that's got my head spinning a little." I nodded slowly. "Mine too." His eyes flicked to mine. "Yeah?" I set my fork down. "Yeah." He didn't say anything for a while, just stared into his coffee like he was waiting for it to cool something bigger than the heat in a mug. Then he said, "It wasn't just me, right?" I shook my head. "No." He seemed to relax a little, like he'd been holding on to that question all night. I cleared my throat. "So what now?" "I don't know," he admitted, "but I don't want to pretend nothing happened." "Even if it didn't?" He cracked a small smile. "Especially because it almost did." We finished eating. He didn't rush off to work like usual. Instead, he lingered. Sat on the edge of the couch while I rinsed the dishes, flipping through his phone like he wasn't really reading anything. When I turned around, he was looking at me. "I'm not great at this," he said. "At what?" "This. Talking. Being honest about what I want." I walked over and sat across from him, elbows on my knees. "So try now." He hesitated, then said, "I like having you here." "Okay." "I like the way it feels at night, sitting next to you." "Okay." He looked down, then back up. "And I wanted to kiss you last night." A lot. My heart kicked. You still want to? His voice dropped. Yeah. We stared at each other again. The same distance, the same air. But this time, it was different. This time, we closed it. I leaned in first. And this time, he didn't pull away. His lips met mine slowly. No rush, no panic, just two people trying to figure out if what they'd been circling all week was real. It was. The kiss wasn't perfect. It was hesitant. A little awkward. But it deepened naturally, like we'd both been holding our breath and finally let it go. When we pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine for a second. Neither of us said anything. Because we didn't need to. It had finally happened. And everything felt different now. After the kiss, we didn't talk much. Not because there was nothing to say, but because it felt like we were both trying to let the moment settle without shattering it, like speaking too soon would make it less real. Marc stood up after a while, quietly gathering his stuff for work. I was still sitting on the couch, heart thudding like I'd just finished a race. He looked over once while slipping on his boots. You gonna be here when I get back? I nodded. Yeah. He smiled, small. Good. And then he left. The door clicked softly behind him, and I just sat there, staring at the dent in the couch cushion where he'd been sitting. I touched my lips like they still held the imprint of his. They did. That whole day was a blur. I answered emails, revised a UI wireframe, made lunch I didn't taste, and kept checking the clock like I was waiting for something specific, like the second he would walk back in the door and somehow tell me what this was now. Around 6:30, he came back. He didn't say hi. He didn't even set his bag down first. He just walked over, stood in front of me while I sat at the dining table with my laptop and said, "Hey." I looked up. Hey. Then, without waiting for a cue, he leaned down and kissed me again. Slower this time. Less uncertain. When he pulled back, he looked nervous. Was that okay? Yeah, I said, breathless. He exhaled, like he'd been holding it all day. Cool, just checking. That night, we didn't fall into bed. We didn't get naked. We didn't rush anything. We ordered pizza. We sat on the floor with the box between us, laughing over which slices had the most toppings. He made me try anchovies. I pretended to hate them, even though I didn't. When the food was gone and we were halfway into a movie, I leaned against him. Just lightly, my shoulder to his chest. His arm wrapped around me like it had been waiting to. It felt stupidly natural. He whispered, I haven't done this in a while. Had pizza? He gave me a look. This. With someone. Me neither, I said. His hand brushed up and down my arm. It wasn't sexual. It was soothing. He didn't try anything else. And neither did I. We just sat there, limbs tangled, eyes half on the screen and half on each other. Eventually, we drifted into that in-between space, where you're not asleep but not really awake either, where the quiet feels sacred, not empty. At some point, I realized he was watching me. I turned my head. What? He shook his head. Nothing. No. What? He hesitated. Then, you fit here. With me. It's weird. I blinked. Weird like bad? Weird like I didn't expect it. That made something in me settle. Same. We fell asleep like that. On the floor, wrapped up in each other, the movie long over, the room dark except for the city lights sneaking in through the blinds. It was the kind of night you don't try to explain to anyone. Because it didn't need explaining. It just was. By the time the weekend rolled around, I wasn't technically just crashing at Marc's anymore. My bag was still sitting by the couch, but it hadn't been zipped in days. My toothbrush lived in his bathroom. My charger was plugged into the wall by his bed, not the couch. And the hoodie I kept borrowing, he stopped asking for it back. We still didn't have a name for it. No dating, no boyfriend, no are we together? But we didn't need one yet. That Saturday, we slept in. Like, really slept in. Marc was the first to wake up. I felt it in the way the bed shifted. He didn't move much, just turned, his arm sliding over my chest like it belonged there. Morning, he murmured. I cracked an eye open. Already? Barely, he said. Still counts. His voice was soft, less guarded than usual. I liked that version of him, the quiet morning one, the one who didn't hide behind dry jokes or casual shrugs. I reached up and threaded my fingers through his. We lay like that for a while. No rush, no plans, just breathing in sync, skin warm, the sheets twisted around our legs. Eventually, he asked, "You want coffee?" I smiled without opening my eyes. "Only if you make it," he snorted. "Lazy." "Affectionate," I corrected. Marc kissed my shoulder and rolled out of bed. Watching him walk toward the kitchen in just his boxers felt surreal. Not because I hadn't seen him like that before, but because now it meant something. It was us now. When I joined him 10 minutes later, he was leaning against the counter, sipping from his mug and scrolling his phone like we'd done this 1,000 times. He looked up. "Your hair's ridiculous," I grinned, running a hand through it. "Your fault for letting me sleep on your good pillow." "You're lucky I like you." I froze a little. He didn't say it with weight, not like a confession, just casually, naturally. Like it had slipped out. "You like me?" I teased, raising an eyebrow. He shot me a look. "Don't push it," but he didn't take it back. And I didn't want him to. That afternoon, we went out for lunch. Nothing fancy, just a local sandwich shop with good bread and a patio. He didn't introduce me to the barista as a friend. He just said my name. It shouldn't have mattered, but it did. Afterward, we walked a few blocks toward the park. The sun was out, the air that kind of crisp fall you don't realize you miss until it hits your lungs. He bumped my shoulder once as we walked. I bumped him back. At one point, our hands brushed. He didn't grab mine, but he didn't move away either. We sat on a bench under a tree for a while, watching some kids run around with kites. He was quiet, sipping the iced tea we'd picked up. Then he said, "Do you think this is going somewhere?" The question caught me off guard. I turned. "You mean us?" He nodded. "Yeah," I said. "I do." He looked at me, eyes squinting slightly against the sun. "You okay with that?" I reached over and slid my fingers between his. "Yeah," I said. "Are you?" He looked down at our hands, turned mine over gently, thumb brushing the inside of my wrist. "I'm not used to things feeling this easy," he admitted. "Does it scare you?" "A little." "Me too." He smiled, small and lopsided. "Still want to do it anyway?" I squeezed his hand. "Definitely." A week later, I moved my duffel bag into the closet. Marc didn't ask. I didn't announce it. One morning, after brushing my teeth with my toothbrush in his bathroom, I just picked up the bag and put it in the corner of the closet beside his shoes. When he noticed, he looked at me for a second. Then he grinned. "Took you long enough." And that was that. We still didn't define it, not out loud. No conversations about exclusivity. No Instagram posts or status updates. But the energy had shifted. This wasn't crashing at a friend's place anymore. This was something else, something that stayed. One night, about 3 weeks in, we were lying in bed after a long day. Him scrolling through Zillow listings like he always did when he was stressed. Me staring at the ceiling, thinking about whether I'd forgotten to invoice a client, when he said, "So you're just living here now, huh?" I turned my head. "Do you want me to go?" He didn't look up. "No, just trying to figure out if we need a second laundry basket." I smiled. "We probably do." That weekend, we bought one. And groceries. And a rug for the hallway. We argued about which bathroom hand towels to get. He won. And I convinced him to try almond milk in his coffee. He hated it, but didn't say so until 2 days later. It was all very domestic. We started cooking dinner together more often, watching movies in bed, leaving the doors open when we showered. He'd steal my socks. I'd steal his hoodies. He started keeping a bottle of wine in the fridge for me. I started cleaning the stove without being asked. It wasn't perfect. We bickered about dumb things. He was weird about the thermostat. I was messy with dishes. Sometimes we got quiet for no reason, retreating into ourselves. But then one of us would reach out, tap a shoulder, brush a hand, lean in without a word, and the quiet would break. One night, we got into a small fight over something forgettable. I don't even remember what sparked it. I just remember sitting on opposite ends of the couch, both of us stewing in silence. Then Mark stood up, crossed the room, and sat next to me. He didn't say sorry. He didn't try to fix it right away. He just took my hand, held it. And after a minute, I exhaled. We didn't need to talk about it. Some things didn't need fixing, just holding. That's what Mark was good at. Not performing affection, not flooding me with big words or grand gestures, just showing up, quietly, consistently. In all the small ways that mattered. It wasn't the love story I thought I'd have, but it was better, because it was real, and it was mine.